They laughed. All 200 of them. But I didn't cry. Not a single tear. Because in that moment, all I felt was a cold, quiet rage, and the absolute certainty that I would make them regret it. It was my sister Tanya's wedding, held in the opulent grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton. 200 guests watched as she floated across the marble floor in a custom Vera Wang gown. All liquid silk and fairy tale dreams. My champagne flute trembled slightly in my hand as I watched her, a bitter irony settling deep in my gut. Here she was, marrying for money while simultaneously demanding mine. My name is Elena, I'm 32, and every single thing I have, I built with my own 2 hands. While Tanya spent her 20s finding herself, with a string of boyfriends and dead-end jobs, I was burning the midnight oil in law school, then grinding through 70-hour weeks at a top Manhattan firm. 5 years ago, I took the biggest leap of faith, starting my own corporate litigation practice. Paid off spectacularly. Last year, I closed a settlement that let me buy a penthouse overlooking Central Park. That penthouse, the one everyone in my family suddenly thought belonged to them. Elena, darling, you look absolutely radiant. My mother, Diane, appeared, her voice dripping with the saccharine sweetness she reserved for when she wanted something. Her silver hair was impeccable, her navy dress undoubtedly costing more than a month's rent for most people. We need to have a little family chat. My stomach plummeted. Family chats in the Morrison household were never ever good news. Mom, it's Tanya's wedding day, I said, trying to keep my voice even. Can't whatever this is wait? Actually, no. My father, Robert, materialized beside her. At 58, he still carried himself with an air of authority in his tailored tuxedo, but his eyes held that familiar look of disappointment, a look I'd known since childhood. We've been discussing your living situation. My living situation? I set my champagne glass down, kneading both hands free, bracing myself. What about my living situation? Well, honey, Mom's voice took on that sickeningly sweet, conspiratorial tone. You know how Tanya and Nathan are starting their family? They're going to need more space than that tiny apartment Nathan has been renting. I blinked. They weren't even pregnant yet. But they will be soon. Tanya's voice cut across the small circle as she joined us, her new husband's arm wrapped around her waist. At 28, she was undeniably beautiful, with auburn hair and green eyes, but there was a calculating glint in her expression that sent a shiver down my spine. We're planning to start trying right away. Congratulations, I said carefully. I'm sure you'll find a lovely place to raise your family. We already have, Tanya said, her smile sharp, almost predatory. We want your penthouse. The words hit me like a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. Excuse me. Now, Elena, before you get all defensive, Dad jumped in, his voice taking on that patronizing tone he used when he thought he was being reasonable. Think about this logically. You're a single woman. You don't need all that space. Tanya and Nathan, on the other hand, are starting a family. They need room for children for their future. You want me to give up my home? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The home I had worked for years, sacrificed for it to afford. Not give up, Mom corrected quickly, her voice a little too high. Trade. You could take Nathan's apartment. It's perfectly adequate for one person. A 600-square-foot studio in Queens, I stated flatly. You want me to trade my 3-bedroom penthouse on the Upper West Side for a studio apartment in Queens? Elena, don't be so dramatic, Tanya scoffed. It's not like you even use all that space. What do you need 3 bedrooms for? You don't even have a boyfriend. The comment stung precisely as she'd intended. Tanya had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. When she dropped out of college, they called it brave. When she cycled through jobs and relationships, they called it exploring her options. When I graduated summa cum laude from law school, they worried I was working too hard. I need those bedrooms because it's my home, I said, my voice rising slightly despite my efforts to control it. I earned it. I paid for it. And I'm not giving it up. Elena Elizabeth Morrison. Mom's voice turned sharp, cutting through the murmurs of nearby guests. That is incredibly selfish. Family comes first. Always. Family. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. When have any of you ever treated me like family? When I was studying for the bar exam and needed support, you told me I was being antisocial. When I started my own firm and was struggling, you said I was being reckless. When I finally succeeded, you acted like it was an accident. That's not true, Dad said, but his voice lacked any conviction. Isn't it? When was the last time any of you asked about my life? My work? My happiness? But the moment I have something you want, suddenly I'm family again. Tanya stepped forward, her face flushed with anger, her perfect makeup tightening around her eyes. You know what your problem is, Elena? You've always been jealous of me. You can't stand that I'm getting married, that I'm going to have the family you'll never have. I'm not jealous of you, Tanya. I'm disappointed in you. Disappointed. She laughed, a truly ugly sound. You're disappointed in me? I'm the one getting married. I'm the one who's going to give Mom and Dad grandchildren. What have you done besides make money? I've built a life, I said quietly, my voice laced with the weariness of years of this same argument. I've worked hard for everything I have. I've never asked any of you for anything. Well, now we're asking something of you, Dad said firmly, stepping between us. Your sister needs that penthouse more than you do. It's time you did something for your family instead of just yourself. Robert's right, Mom added, her voice getting louder, attracting more attention. Selfish children don't deserve success. The accusation was so absurd, so infuriatingly untrue, I almost laughed again. You've had everything handed to you, and now you won't even help your own sister. Handed to me? I worked 3 jobs to pay for law school. I lived on ramen noodles for 2 years while building my practice. I never asked them for a dime. Your sister's kids need real homes. Dad's voice boomed across the ballroom, causing several nearby guests to turn and stare, their conversations dying. Not some cramped apartment. They deserve better. They're not even conceived yet. I protested, but I could see I was losing this battle just like I always did. My family had always been experts at making me feel guilty for my own success. Tanya stepped closer, her voice dropping to a low, venomous hiss. You know what, Elena? I'm done pretending to care about your feelings. I've always known I was the better daughter. I'm prettier. I'm more likable. I'm the one who makes Mom and Dad proud. And now I'm finally getting what I've always deserved. The words hung in the air like a challenge, a poison dart aimed straight at my heart. Around us, wedding guests were starting to gather, sensing the drama, openly staring now. What you've always deserved. I repeated softly, my voice barely a whisper. And what exactly is that, Tanya? Everything, she said simply, her eyes blazing with triumphant entitlement. The penthouse, the respect, the life you've been hoarding for yourself. I deserve it all, and I'm finally going to get it. Over my dead body. The slap came so fast I didn't see it coming. Tanya's hand connected with my cheek with a sharp, sickening crack that echoed through the ballroom. The sound seemed to freeze time for a moment. All 200 guests fell silent, their conversations stopping mid-sentence as they turned to stare at the spectacle unfolding before them. Then the laughter started. It began as a few scattered chuckles from Tanya's friends, the ones who had always looked down on me for being too serious, too focused on work. But it spread like wildfire through the crowd. Guests who didn't even know me were laughing, pointing, whispering behind their hands. Asterisk, did you see that? She actually slapped her. About time someone put Elena in her place. I always knew she was stuck up. Asterisk, my cheek burned, a fiery brand, but I didn't cry. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Instead, I stood there, feeling the weight of 200 pairs of eyes on me, listening to their laughter, their whispered comments, their judgment. Tanya was smiling now, a look of pure triumph on her face. Maybe now you'll start acting like a real sister. Mom and Dad stood behind her, not apologizing for their daughter's behavior, not defending me. They just watched, waiting to see if I would finally cave to their demands. That's when I realized something important. This wasn't just about the penthouse. This was about them putting me in my place, reminding me that no matter how successful I became, no matter how hard I worked, I would always be the disappointment, the one who didn't matter. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had humiliated me in front of 200 witnesses, including some very important people in New York's legal and business communities. People who knew me, who respected me, who had seen what I was capable of. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone, my hands surprisingly steady despite the rage coursing through my veins. Without a word, I started typing. Elena, what are you doing? Mom asked nervously, sensing a shift in the air. I ignored her, continuing to type. Around us, the laughter was starting to die down as people realized I wasn't reacting the way they expected. I wasn't crying, wasn't running away in shame. I was doing something else entirely. Elena, put that away, Dad demanded, his voice laced with panic. You're embarrassing yourself. No, I said quietly, still typing. I'm not the one who should be embarrassed. Tanya tried to grab my phone, but I stepped back, hitting send just as her fingers brushed the screen. What did you do? She hissed, her voice a furious whisper. I looked up at her, at my parents, at the crowd of guests who were still watching us with undisguised fascination. I chose the revenge that would silence you forever. The confusion on their faces was almost comical. They clearly expected me to either give in or storm out in tears. They didn't expect me to fight back. My phone buzzed with a response, then another, then several more in rapid succession. Elena, what did you send? Mom's voice was shrill now, panic creeping in. I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd felt all evening, though it held no warmth. I sent a message to my group chat. You know, the one with all my lawyer friends, the journalists I've worked with, the business contacts I've made over the years. The people who actually matter in this city. Tanya's face went white. What kind of message? Just a little update about tonight's events. How my family demanded I give up my penthouse to my sister and her new husband. How my mother screamed that selfish children don't deserve success. How my father said my sister's hypothetical children needed real homes more than I do. How my sister slapped me in front of 200 people because I wouldn't hand over my life's work. The ballroom had gone completely silent now. Even the string quartet had stopped playing. I also mentioned how everyone laughed when I was assaulted. I continued, my voice carrying clearly through the silence. How amusing they found it that a successful woman was being put in her place by her family. Elena, you need to delete that right now, Dad said, his voice dangerously low, a new kind of fear dawning in his eyes. Delete what? The truth. I shrugged, a cold calm settling over me. Too late anyway. It's already been shared. You know how social media works, Dad. Once something's out there, it's out there forever. My phone was buzzing constantly now. Messages of support, outrage on my behalf, requests for more details. The story was spreading faster than I'd anticipated. You vindictive, Tanya snarled, but her voice was shaking now. No, Tanya. I'm just done being your doormat. Nathan, who had been silent throughout this entire exchange, finally spoke up, looking utterly lost. Elena, maybe we can work something out. We didn't mean for things to go this far. I looked at him with something approaching pity. You married into the wrong family, Nathan. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. What do you mean? He asked, genuine confusion in his voice. I mean, your new wife and in-laws just made some very powerful enemies. Do you know who Judge Margaret Chin is? She was here tonight. She saw everything. She's already texted me expressing her disgust at your wife's behavior. And David Rodriguez from the Times? He's been following me around all evening trying to get an interview about my latest case. He saw the whole thing. He's asking if I want to comment on how successful women are treated by their families. Elena, stop. Mom pleaded, her hands clasped. You're going to ruin Tanya's wedding. Tanya ruined her own wedding when she decided to assault me in front of 200 people. It was just a slap. Tanya protested, her voice rising hysterically. You're being dramatic. It was assault, Tanya. And it was witnessed by 200 people, including several lawyers, a judge, and apparently a reporter. You want to know what I deserve? I deserve not to be physically attacked by my own family. My phone rang. I glanced at the screen and smiled. Oh, this is interesting. It's Amanda Walsh from Walsh & Associates. You know, the law firm that handles high-profile reputation management cases. She's offering her services pro bono. The blood drained from Tanya's face. Reputation management meant one thing in New York society: scandal control. And if Amanda Walsh was calling, it meant the story was already spreading beyond my immediate circle. Elena, please. Tanya's voice was barely a whisper now, utterly broken. Now I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hit you. I was just emotional. You're sorry. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Only cold, hard truth. You're sorry that there are consequences to your actions. You're sorry that you can't just take whatever you want from me without pushback. But you're not sorry for what you did. I am sorry, she insisted, tears finally starting to stream down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. I'll apologize publicly. I'll tell everyone it was a mistake. Too late for that. The damage is done. And it was. I could see it in the faces of the guests around us. The laughter had died completely, replaced by uncomfortable whispers and pointed stares. The people who had found my humiliation amusing were now looking at Tanya with disgust. The social media posts were already going viral. And in New York's elite circles, reputation was everything. What do you want? Dad asked quietly, defeat clear in his voice, his shoulders slumped. I want you to leave me alone, I said simply, my voice unwavering. All of you. I want you to stop treating me like an ATM. Stop expecting me to sacrifice my happiness for Tanya's convenience. And stop pretending that family means anything to you beyond what you can get from me. Elena, we're still family, Mom said weakly, desperately clinging to a facade. No, we're not. Family doesn't demand you give up your home. Family doesn't scream at you in public. Family doesn't assault you at a wedding. Family supports each other, celebrates each other's successes, and treats each other with respect. You've never done any of those things for me. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from my assistant. Asterisk Elena, TMZ is calling. They want to know if you're the lawyer who was assaulted at the Ritz-Carlton wedding. What should I tell them? Asterisk, I held up the phone so everyone could see the message. TMZ is calling. This is about to become a very public story. Tanya started sobbing now, her perfect makeup running down her cheeks, a black stream. Elena, please. This is my wedding day. Don't ruin it. I'm not ruining anything, Tanya. I'm just refusing to be your victim anymore. What can we do? Nathan asked desperately, his face pale with shock. How do we fix this? I looked at him, then at my parents, then at my sister who was now a crumpled mess in her expensive dress. You can't fix this, Nathan. This is who they are. This is what they do. They take and take and take until there's nothing left. And when you finally say no, they attack you for it. The ballroom was starting to empty now. Guests were making their excuses, slipping away from what was clearly a family disaster. Tanya's perfect wedding was falling apart. and everyone wanted to distance themselves from the drama. The penthouse is mine, I said quietly, firmly. I earned it. I paid for it. And I'm keeping it. If you want to live somewhere nice, Tanya, get a job. Work for it like I did. I can't believe you're doing this, she whispered, her voice choked with tears. I can't believe it took me this long. I turned to leave, but Dad grabbed my arm. Elena, wait. We can work this out. Family counseling, mediation, whatever you want. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then up at his face. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Let go of me, Dad. He released me immediately, clearly realizing how it would look if he physically restrained me after what had just happened. There's nothing to work out. You made your choice tonight. You chose Tanya over me just like you always have. You chose her convenience over my hard work. You chose her demands over my boundaries. And when I said no, you chose to watch her assault me rather than defend me. We didn't know she was going to hit you, Mom protested, her voice weak. But you didn't stop her. You didn't apologize. You didn't even check if I was okay. You just stood there and let it happen. I started walking toward the exit, my heels clicking on the marble floor. Behind me, I could hear Tanya's sobs, Mom's frantic whispers, Dad's angry muttering. But I didn't look back. At the door, I turned around one last time. The once grand ballroom now looked like the scene of a disaster. Wedding guests were scattered in small groups, whispering and pointing. The bride was crying, her makeup ruined. The groom looked utterly shell-shocked. And my parents were trying to control damage that was already spiraling beyond their control. You know what the funny thing is? I called out, my voice carrying across the nearly empty room, echoing slightly. I would have helped you if you'd asked nicely. If you'd come to me with respect, if you treated me like family instead of like a bank account, I would have helped you find a nice place to live. I might have even helped with the down payment. The silence that followed was deafening. But you didn't ask for help. You demanded my home. You screamed at me, insulted me, and then physically attacked me when I said no. So now you get nothing. I walked out of the Ritz-Carlton with my head held high, leaving behind the wreckage of my sister's wedding and my family's reputation. The elevator ride down felt eternal. As the doors closed behind me, I could still hear the chaos from the ballroom. Muffled voices crying, the sound of chairs scraping against marble as the remaining guests hurried to leave. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since I'd sent that message. And with each notification, I felt a mixture of vindication and a strange, heavy dread. The lobby was mercifully quiet. The night manager, a distinguished man in his 50s, approached me with concern etched on his face. Ms. Morrison, is everything all right? We heard there was some commotion upstairs. I paused, realizing that even the hotel staff had heard about the incident. I'm fine, thank you. Just family drama. He nodded diplomatically, but I could see the curiosity in his eyes. By tomorrow, this story would be all over the hotel staff gossip network, then spread to other luxury establishments throughout the city. In New York's elite circles, scandal traveled faster than wildfire. Outside, the cool October air hit my face like a slap. Ironic, considering I'd already been slapped once tonight. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, watching the traffic flow down Central Park South, trying to process what had just happened. Part of me couldn't believe I'd actually done it. The other part of me wondered why it had taken so long. My phone rang. It was my best friend Riley, a prosecutor I'd met during my first year at the firm. Elena, what the hell is going on? I just saw your group message, and now there are photos all over Instagram. Did Tanya really hit you? She did. I started walking toward the subway, needing to move, to do something with the adrenaline still coursing through my veins. Holy, are you okay? Do you want me to come over? I'm fine, Jess. Actually, I'm better than fine. I think I'm finally free. Free. Free from pretending they're actually my family. Free from feeling guilty about my success. Free from walking on eggshells every time I'm around them. There was a pause on the other end. Elena, you know this is going to get messy, right? Like really messy. I know, but I'm tired of being the one who always has to clean up their messes. Let them figure it out for once. What about your parents? They're going to be devastated. I stopped walking, a sudden exhaustion washing over me. Jess, they stood there and watched their daughter assault me in public. They demanded I give up my home for their golden child. They called me selfish for wanting to keep what I've worked for. When exactly am I supposed to start caring about their feelings? You're right, she said quietly, a sigh on the other end. I'm sorry. I know how much family means to you. Family means everything to me, but they stopped being my family a long time ago. I was just too blind to see it. After hanging up with Riley, I decided to walk home instead of taking the subway. I needed time to think, to process what had just happened and what was likely to come next. The 40-block walk from Midtown to my Upper West Side penthouse would give me that time. As I walked, my phone continued to buzz with messages. Some were from colleagues who'd been at the wedding, expressing their shock and support. Others were from friends who'd seen the posts spreading on social media. A few were from journalists who'd somehow gotten my number, wanting quotes about the incident. The most surprising message came from Patricia Winters, the senior partner at my old firm. We'd parted on good terms when I'd left to start my own practice, but we rarely spoke now. Elena, I just heard about tonight. I want you to know that you have my complete support. What happened to you is unacceptable, and I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. If you need anything at all, please don't hesitate to call. Reading her message, I felt tears prick at my eyes for the first time all evening. Not tears of sadness or pain, but tears of profound gratitude. Here was someone who barely knew my family, who had no obligation to support me, offering her help simply because it was the right thing to do. It made me realize just how wrong my family had been about me. They painted me as selfish, as someone who only cared about money and success. But the messages flooding my phone told a different story. They were from people who knew the real me. The person who'd mentored junior associates, who'd done pro bono work for domestic violence victims, who'd volunteered at legal aid clinics, even when I was working 80-hour weeks. By the time I reached my building, I had over 200 messages and missed calls. My doorman, Carlos, looked at me with concern as I entered the lobby. "Miss Elena, you okay? You look like you've had a tough night." Carlos had been working in my building for 15 years. He'd seen me through law school stress, relationship breakups, career changes, and countless late nights. He knew me better than my own family did. "I've had better nights, Carlos," I admitted, managing a small, tired smile. "But I think things are going to get better from here." He smiled back. "That's good to hear. You deserve all the happiness in the world." In the elevator, I finally allowed myself to really look at my reflection in the mirrored walls. My cheek was still red from Tanya's slap. My hair was slightly disheveled, and my makeup was smudged, but my eyes were clear and determined. I looked like someone who had been through battle and emerged victorious. My penthouse felt like a sanctuary as I walked through the door. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, the lights twinkling like scattered diamonds. This was my space, my achievement, my home, and no one was going to take it from me. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my couch, finally allowing myself to scroll through the social media posts that were spreading about the incident. Someone had filmed Tanya slapping me, probably thinking it was funny at the time, and posted it on Instagram. The video had already been shared hundreds of times, with comments ranging from outrage to support. "This is disgusting. Who hits someone at a wedding? That lawyer is my hero for not backing down. The sister is clearly entitled AF. Family or not, assault is assault. I can't believe everyone was laughing. What's wrong with people?" But it wasn't just random internet users commenting. I recognized names from New York's legal community, business leaders, even a few celebrities who'd apparently seen the video. The story was taking on a life of its own, spreading far beyond the confines of Tanya's wedding. My phone rang again. This time it was my assistant, Maria, calling from her personal number. "Elena, I'm so sorry to bother you on a Saturday night, but I've been getting calls all evening. The office voicemail is full, and reporters keep calling my personal line asking for statements." "What kind of reporters?" "Everyone. Local news, Page 6, TMZ, even CNN. This story is everywhere." I closed my eyes, suddenly feeling utterly exhausted. "What are they asking?" "They want to know if you're pressing charges, if you're planning to sue, what your family relationship was like before this. Some are asking about your law practice and your success story. A few want to know about your dating life." Of course they did. A successful single woman being attacked by her married sister. It was the kind of story that fed into every narrative about women's success and family dynamics. "Maria, I need you to draft a statement. Keep it simple and professional. Something like, Ms. Morrison is grateful for the outpouring of support she's received. She's focusing on her work and her clients at this time, and won't be making any further public comments about this private family matter. Should I mention anything about pressing charges?" I hesitated. The truth was I hadn't even thought about pressing charges. Tanya's slap had been more about humiliation than physical harm, but the question made me realize that I had options I hadn't considered. Don't mention charges either way. Let's keep our options open. After hanging up with Maria, I realized I was hungry. I hadn't eaten anything at the wedding, too nervous about the family confrontation I'd sensed was coming. I ordered Thai food and settled in to really examine the fallout from tonight's events. By late that evening, the story was gaining serious traction on social media. The Instagram video of the slap had been reposted by several gossip accounts, accumulating thousands of views within hours. But more interesting were the think pieces already being written about the incident. A feminist blogger had written about women being expected to sacrifice their success for family. A family therapist had posted about toxic family dynamics. A legal expert was explaining assault laws in New York. My story had become bigger than just family drama. It had tapped into something deeper. Conversations about success, gender, family expectations, and standing up for yourself. Tanya's Instagram account, which had been full of wedding photos and celebrations just hours ago, was now flooded with negative comments. People were calling her entitled, abusive, and spoiled. Her wedding hashtag Tanya and Nathan forever was being used ironically to share the video of her hitting me. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then I remembered the look of triumph on her face when she'd slapped me, the way she'd sneered about finally getting what she deserved, and the sympathy evaporated. My food arrived, and as I ate the pad thai, I started getting calls from unexpected sources. My college roommate, who I hadn't spoken to in years, called to express her support. A cousin from my father's side, someone who'd always been the black sheep of the family, reached out to share her own stories of being mistreated by relatives. Even my high school guidance counselor, who'd apparently seen the story on Facebook, called to say she was proud of how far I'd come. But the most meaningful call came from Judge Margaret Chen, who'd been at the wedding. Elena, I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from the court directory. I wanted to personally apologize for what I witnessed tonight. Judge Chen, you don't need to apologize. You didn't do anything wrong. I should have intervened. I should have said something when I saw what was happening. Instead, I just stood there like everyone else. You were a guest at a wedding, not a referee at a family fight. Perhaps. But I've been thinking about it all evening, and I keep coming back to something. That wasn't just family drama, Elena. That was a pattern of abuse. Emotional abuse, financial abuse, and then physical abuse. I've seen it too many times in my courtroom. Her words hit me like a physical blow. I'd been so focused on the slap, on the demands for my penthouse, that I hadn't really considered the bigger picture. But she was right. This wasn't just one bad night. This was the culmination of years of my family treating me like their personal ATM, dismissing my achievements, and making me feel guilty for my success. I never thought of it that way. I admit it, a raw vulnerability in my voice. Abuse isn't always obvious, especially when it's coming from family. We're conditioned to accept behavior from relatives that we'd never tolerate from strangers. But what I saw tonight, the financial demands, the public humiliation, the physical violence, that's a textbook case of family abuse. After I hung up with Judge Chan, I sat in my apartment for a long time, thinking about her words. Had I really been abused by my family? Seemed too strong a word. They'd never hit me before tonight. They'd never threatened me or tried to control my daily life. But they had constantly undermined my achievements, made me feel guilty for my success, and expected me to sacrifice my happiness for Tanya's convenience. They treated me like a bank account rather than a daughter and sister. And when I finally said no, they publicly humiliated and physically attacked me. Maybe Judge Chan was right. Maybe this was abuse, just in a form I hadn't recognized. The realization was both liberating and heartbreaking. Liberating because it confirmed that I was right to cut ties with them. Heartbreaking because it meant accepting that my family had never really loved me. They just loved what I could provide for them. As the night wore on, I found myself actually feeling grateful for Tanya's slap. It had been the wake-up call I'd needed. The final straw that had given me the courage to stop enabling their behavior. Without it, I might have continued to be their doormat for years to come. By 2 a.m. I was exhausted but oddly at peace. I'd silenced my phone notifications to stop the constant buzzing, and was preparing for bed when I heard the building's intercom. I checked the video monitor and saw Tanya standing outside, still in her wedding dress, mascara streaked down her cheeks. She looked up at the camera and mouthed, "Please." For a moment I wavered. She looked so broken, so desperate. The sister I'd grown up with, despite everything, was standing outside my building in her ruined wedding dress, begging for help. Then I remembered her triumphant smile after she'd slapped me. I remembered her saying she deserved everything I'd worked for. I remembered the laughter of 200 people as I stood there, humiliated and alone. I turned off the monitor and went to bed. The story broke on page 6 the next morning. Lawyer assaulted by sister at Ritz wedding was the headline, accompanied by a grainy photo someone had taken of Tanya slapping me. The article detailed the entire incident, from my family's demands for my penthouse to the assault in front of 200 witnesses. By noon it was trending on social media. Hashtag wedding assault and hashtag family greed were both going viral, with thousands of people sharing their own stories of entitled family members and supporting my decision to fight back. Tanya's new mother-in-law called her that afternoon to disinvite her from the family Christmas party. Nathan's law firm launched an internal investigation after several clients expressed concern about his association with the incident. Mom and Dad's country club membership was quietly suspended pending review. The revenge I'd chosen wasn't violent or illegal. It was simply the truth, amplified by the power of social media and the connections I'd spent years building. Sometimes the most devastating weapon is just letting people see who someone really is. Tanya called me a week later, crying and begging me to help them control the damage. She'd been fired from her job at a boutique PR firm after clients started canceling their contracts. Nathan was facing a professional ethics review. Their honeymoon had been cut short when photographers started following them. "Elena, please," she sobbed into the phone. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen." "You meant to humiliate me," I said calmly. looking out at the Central Park view I'd worked so hard to afford. You meant to force me to give up my home. You meant to put me in my place in front of 200 people. The only thing you didn't mean was to face consequences for it. I'll do anything. I'll apologize publicly. I'll tell everyone I was wrong. Tanya, stop. I took a deep breath. You can't apologize your way out of this. You can't take back what you did. And you can't force me to forgive you just because you're finally facing consequences. But we're family, she whispered, desperate. Family doesn't assault each other, Tanya. Family doesn't demand sacrifices they're not willing to make themselves. Family doesn't laugh when one of their own is humiliated. I know I messed up, but please help me fix this. I can't fix this for you. This is something you have to live with. She hung up crying and I never heard from her again. 6 months later, Tanya and Nathan divorced. The stress of the scandal, combined with the financial pressure of both losing their jobs, had destroyed their marriage before it really began. Tanya moved back in with our parents, who were dealing with their own social exile. Dad's business suffered as clients distanced themselves from the family that had become synonymous with entitlement and greed. Meanwhile, my practice thrived. The publicity, while initially uncomfortable, ultimately worked in my favor. I became known as the lawyer who wouldn't be bullied, who stood up for herself, even when it meant standing alone. New clients sought me out specifically because they'd heard about my refusal to back down. I never got my family back, but I realized I'd never really had them to begin with. What I'd had was a group of people who saw me as a resource to be exploited, not a person to be loved. The penthouse remained mine, of course. I eventually converted one of the spare bedrooms into a home office, and the other into a guest room for the friends who actually cared about me. The space Tanya had claimed I didn't need became filled with the relationships I built with people who valued me for who I was, not what I could give them. Sometimes I wonder if I could have handled things differently, if there was a way to maintain my boundaries without destroying my family. But then I remember the sound of that slap echoing through the ballroom, the laughter of 200 people, and the look of triumph on Tanya's face when she thought she'd won. I chose the revenge that would silence them forever, and it worked. They never asked me for anything again. The silence was exactly what I'd wanted, even if it wasn't what I'd expected. In the end, I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting back at someone. Sometimes it's just refusing to let them get away with it. Sometimes it's standing up and saying, "No, you don't get to treat me like this anymore." And sometimes that's enough to change everything. Have you ever had to choose between your peace and your family? Tell me what you think. I really want to know.